So today I want to show you how we can use these uh, highly theoretical, abstract models of analysis of language to analyze going to and will in a way that we can use this knowledge to improve the way we teach our students. So before I show you all of that, I'd like to make a little review of a couple of books that attempt to analyze and teach us how to use will and or going to. So the first book that I'd like to mention is this one. Of course, there are many other grammar books around. There's nothing really in particular about this one. It's just that I want you to give you a sense of what the common conceptions around the um, community of English teachers is and are. So essential grammar in use. You can see that I have copy pasted the part of the contents, part of the index. And give me a second, somebody's trying to get in. So where is going to? It is below. It says future, 25. What are you doing tomorrow? 26. I'm going to. 27. Will and shall. So I copy pasted 26, which I'm going to show you now here. So here is I'm going to, and I'm not going to read everything, but I just want you to have an idea of the types of things that we usually read about going to. So what do we find here? In this particular book, we have first the typical examples. I'm going to watch TV this evening, and then we have the structural analysis, and then we have this timeline that kind of helps to define what part of the time spectrum going to covers. So here we have, I decided to do it, I'm going to do it, and you have the past and the now and the future and this arrow. And it says here that I'm going to do something. I have decided to do it. So it's a sort of decision. My intention is to do it. So I have here highlighted with some arrows what I think is trying to, what this grammar is trying to convey to show us about going to. And one thing that I would like to highlight is the word intention, because that's very probably what most of us have come to think about going to. What is going to used for? It's used for intentions. That's our most common definition of semantic definition of going to. And then here below, we have a second type of meaning. Something is going to happen. We can see now that it is sure to happen. That's what we usually call predictions based on evidence. And our most typical example that we always give our students is it's going to rain. We always tell our students that the way to remember what we mean by predictions based on evidence using going to is thinking about how we look out to the sky and we say, hey, look at those black clouds. It is surely going to rain. And that's the typical example we give in order to talk about. I could say that's our prototypical example in order to talk about going to used to talk about predictions based on evidence. And then this book gives us some exercises. Here I have pointed out some parts that I find interesting. For instance, here in 26.2, sorry, we have examples such as my hands are dirty, I'm going to wash them. So that's basically a type of intention, right? What are you going to wear to the party tonight? That's another type of intention. So these exercises here are basically meant to practice going to for intentions. And then here, what is going to happen, and then the black clouds, and these books are going to fall, and this car is probably going to crash, and this boy is probably going to kick the ball. And those are all predictions based on evidence. So these exercises are meant to practice just that. And then here, what are you going to do today or tomorrow? We know very well that this exercise in particular is trying to make our students or ourselves talk about or practice used going to talk about plans or intentions. So with that, with all that in mind, we could very well say that going to is used to talk about plans or intentions. and predictions based on evidence. That's one of our most common conceptions of going to. Now, let's analyze another grammar um, that I think is quite popular amongst English teachers. This is another Cambridge grammar book, English Grammar in Use, and I have copy pasted part of the index. And here in the future section, we have present tenses. I'm doing, I do for the future. I'm going to, will, shall, etc. And I have here copy pasted part of the contents. And once again, we are presented with different types of information about going, will, and going to. And then right away, we're given a number of exercises in order to practice whatever we have been explained over here. And I have once again highlighted what I think are the most important notions that this book is trying to point to. So, for instance, here, decision for will. Here we have an example. Let's have a party. That's a great idea. We'll invite lots of people. So that's a decision. That's what we normally call a spontaneous decision. This girl, Helen, had not previously thought about inviting anybody because she was not thinking about a party before she spoke to this other woman, Sarah. And that's basically an example of what we usually call a spontaneous decision. And here we have another example. Sarah and I have decided to have a party. We're going to invite lots of people because Helen had previously talked to Helen. This is not a spontaneous decision anymore. This is something that has already been planned way before, and that's what we call a plan. So we say that we use going to for plans and will for spontaneous decisions. Here it's a nice timeline where this grammar emphasizes that will for spontaneous decisions it refers to actions that are taken in the here and now. Whereas when we use going to for plans, it is a decision that was not taken or is not being taken in the here and now. It has been taken sometime before. It says here decision before. And then we're given in part B, future happenings and situations predicted in the future. So this is a different meaning from the ones above. We have some examples. I think the weather will be nice later, or I think the weather is going to be nice later. Now, it's interesting to notice that we're using both will and going to talk about predictions. Another example, two more examples. Those shoes are well made. They'll or will last a long time, or they are going to last a long time. So those are predictions, and we're being shown that we can talk about predictions using either will or going to. So once again, we're being given a number of meanings associated with will and going to. So I'm going to update our previous charts so that I can include these other meanings that I have found in these other grammar. So now I include here predictions based on evidence and for going to, and predictions as well as spontaneous decisions for will. Now, here is another grammar. This is, in fact, my favorite grammar ever. This is my personal choice. I guess every teacher has a different um, everybody has different um, preferences. So this is from Azar, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Hagen. And here we have part of the index. Here is future time in chapter 3, will and be going to, will versus going to. Let's see what they have to offer. So first of all, we're given a sort of introduction where we are required to write C if the sentence has a correct verb, and I for incorrect, and some exercises. And then we are given this chart, which is loaded with a lot of information. Here I have highlighted what I think is most interesting for the purposes of today's discussion. Once again, we can notice that Azar points to predictions for will. So once again, she's telling us that will is often used for predictions. For instance, the weather will turn cold tonight. And then here below, we have be going to, again, being pointed out as a construction to talk about predictions. Snow is going to continue all week. The roads are going to be icy. Um, Below, we're required to, or we're given the option to answer some exercises that talk about predictions. So taking all that into account, our chart doesn't change too much or at all, actually. So once again, according to Azar, in going to is used for intentions or plans, as well as for predictions based on evidence. And the will is used for, according to what we had already shown before, spontaneous decisions and predictions. So far, so good. Azar offers further more information. Um, and then here, Wilbur versus be going to is we have the information that we can talk about predictions with will or going to. We have some examples. According to the weather report, it will be cloudy tomorrow. According to the weather report, it is going to be cloudy tomorrow. One more time, we are being shown that both will as well as going to can be used to talk about predictions. And then we have prior plans or simply plans. Of course, prior is not necessarily to be pointed out, but it is being shown here. Examples, I'm going to paint my bedroom tomorrow. And here we have, are you busy this evening? Well, I really don't have any plans. And then we are being shown that both will and going to can be used to say, I'll eat or I'm going to eat dinner. And then I'm probably going to watch. So in this case, Azar is telling us that we can talk about plans using either will or going to. Another example here with will, the meeting will begin at 10 a.m. Willingness, this is a term that I think we had not seen before, or maybe yes. Um, so for instance, the phone's ringing, I'll get it. How old is Aunt Agnes? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I don't know. She won't tell me. The car won't start. So willingness, in my view, is pretty similar to spontaneous decision, though willingness is I think a much broader term that includes spontaneous decisions. So you can see that different authors are covering more or less the same ideas with slightly different terminology around the analysis of will and going to. Um, I have used a different arrow here to point out that you couldn't say that the car won't start is an example of a spontaneous decision. That's not a spontaneous decision. That's a sort of metaphorical case, a personification of a car wanting or not wanting, willing or not willing to start. But once again, it's basically a sort of either spontaneous decision or willingness to do something. And then the exercises below are very clear that we want to realize and become aware of cases in which we're talking about predictions, willingness, and plans. So once again, these terms appear, and we can take a look at our chart again with Azar's grammar in mind. And what do we get at this time? Well, going to is still be a construction that we use in order to talk about intentions or plans, as well as predictions based on evidence. And will is used for spontaneous decisions, but I have now added the term willingness because there are some cases, such as the car won't start, in which you cannot really say that that's an instance of a spontaneous decision. The car is not taking a spontaneous decision. It's simply metaphorically not wanting to start. And predictions. And then Azar gives us this summary of verb tenses or an overview. And what's interesting is that in her view, this is the way to represent simple future with the two different constructions that are available for us. Time will study tomorrow and time is going to study tomorrow. Those are the two ways to talk about the future. And Azar is saying that in a timeline, this is marked as a sort of asterisk or something. Sorry, there is something in Hi, hello, teacher Mary Christine. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here, teacher. I'm sorry if I'm suddenly moving my head. There is a fly moving or flying around here. Sorry if I look weird moving my head like a crazy person. Um, Now, this is another grammar. This is a website. You probably know englishpage.com. And if you just surf around englishpage.com, you will find this verb tense chart. And what I am interested in discussing today is will and going to. We're given some examples. If you are having problems, I will help you study English with everything we have been discussing today. We immediately recognize that this is an example of a sort of spontaneous decision. I was not planning to help anybody. Um, but I see somebody having a trouble and I say, well, I offer my help, so I will help you study English. And another example here is I'm going to study English next year. This is not a spontaneous decision. This is a plan or intention. And then this website offers some information. Once again, we're given a timeline. Um, and some explanations. In fact, we're being told that there are 4 different uses, and I have underlined the information that I have deemed most interesting for the discussion at hand today. So we'll often suggest that a speaker will do something voluntarily. So that's willingness, that's spontaneous decision. But then we have another term that I find interesting, which is or request for help and refuse. And well, here we have will for promises. So taking all this information into account, I have expanded our chart in the following way. Going to doesn't change at all, but with the previous information in mind, I have added that will is also used for requests, refusals, and promises. So you can see that the categories that we use in order to define and talk about the differences between going to and will are little by little increasing. You're going to see that it becomes quite problematic once we take into account many other approaches to going to and will in different grammars. Here in the same website, another definition uses the word intends. So that's an intention for be going to, and will or be going to are both used for predictions. Um, Now, this is part of a paper that I was doing last year. I've been doing some research around these tenses for some time now. And I'm going to show you what I think. I'm going to read in a moment what I think are all the different categorizations or categories of conceptualization that I have been able to find in different grammar books or websites and so on and so forth. So let me read the different categories that I've found over the time. So the future tense is certainly amidst one of the most complex sets of grammatical structures in the English language. Traditional characterizations have posited that will is for spontaneous decisions. Example, I'll have a salad, please. So you are choosing a dish in a restaurant. Predictions, scientists will find a cure against cancer within the next 50 years. Offers, I'll help you with your homework if you want me to. Promises, I won't do it again, I promise. Requests, will you open the door, please? Invitations, will you come to my party? Refusals, I will help you, but I won't lend you any money. Scheduled arrangements, the rescheduled 2020 Summer Olympics will take place in Tokyo, Japan until 2021. And facts, the sun will rise at 6:30 tomorrow. Do notice, please, that this category of conceptualization of fact is one that I had not covered that is not covered in all the previous grammars that I was showing you. You couldn't say that the sun rising at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow in the morning is you couldn't say that's a spontaneous decision. You couldn't say that it's an offer. You could probably say it's a prediction, but somebody somewhere has proposed that it is a sort of fact more than a prediction because normally predictions are things that we are not very certain about, while facts are things that we are very certain about. And it's not a promise, it's not an invitation, it's not a request, it's not a refusal, it's not a scheduled arrangement. So this additional category of conceptualization or analysis of will is interesting, but you should need, realize by now that we have so many categories to talk about will, it becomes kind of chaotic. So what is the true meaning of will? Do you remember I talked the first week to you about what is the true meaning of words? What is the true meaning of will? And then in this paper that I was writing last year, I also mentioned that we use going to talk about plans. I'm going to read a book this afternoon. Predictions based on evidence. The match is 5-0. Already know that blue team is going to win. And intentions. I'm going to learn to drive. And I will not discuss in a lot of detail present progressive, but we could talk about present progressive in some other time, which is used to talk about fixed arrangements. You know that very well. Patrick is getting married next month. Our typical example is about people getting married. So with all these different examples that I have been showing you, we can expand even more our initial chart in a way that we can propose that going to is used to talk about intentions or plans. There is a slight small difference between intentions and plans. I have decided to collapse both of them under one category, but we could discuss if it is worth making a strong distinction between intentions and plans. And B, predictions based on evidence, but what about will, spontaneous decisions? Some grammars prefer to use the term willingness. Some other grammars prefer the term voluntary actions. And most grammars do talk about predictions. And some other books or grammars or websites talk about will being used for requests, refusals, promises, offers, invitations, schedule arrangements, and facts. So it becomes quite chaotic. So what is exactly the true core central nuclear meaning of will, and what is the core central nuclear meaning of going to? Um, you could argue that my category in C refers to a sort of pragmatic rather than semantic meaning. Um, but the point is that we have all these categories of under contention. Now, both as a teacher and as a student, this is pretty confusing. When you analyze so different grammars, so many different authors, and different examples you find here and there, examples that you make on your own, and so on and so forth, you start wondering, so what is the difference between an intention and a promise? Where do we draw the line between what an intention is and what a promise is? When you promise something, you have an intention to do something, right? And where do we draw the line between plans and scheduled arrangements? And where do we draw the exact line between a prediction that is being based on an evidence and a prediction that is just a prediction? In my view, this is both confusing for teachers and for students. Most grammars are not very clear about these overlaps or overlapping between these two categories of conceptualization, of grammatical conceptualization. So what I'm showing you here is my proposal of what I think are what is an analysis of how to make more sense of the differences between will, going to, and also the present progressive. I will not stress very much today, maybe some other day, the internal organization of of the present progressive in order to talk about fixed arrangements. But I have nevertheless decided to put it here just to remember that we have another uh, grammatical strategy to talk about the future in English. So the following table shows the complex interplay of different traits within the internal semantics of each syntactic construction that I have called into question. I will explain their core traits in the ensuing paragraphs. Compression, agency, and pathway tracking. So this, you remember the examples of birds, chairs, what else? Vehicles. We discussed in conceptual prototypes the fact that there are certain traits that are common to different animals or objects of the world that we categorize. And you remember we were discussing that a penguin is not a very good example of a bird, but it is part of the category birds. The same goes for ostrich. Ostriches share some characteristics with other birds, but not other characteristics. So that's more or less the idea here, that will be our present progressive, as well as going to share some characteristics and not others. But certain characteristics are nuclear or central to each construction. So I am proposing here that will has as that core trait or characteristic. You can call it whichever way you prefer: nuclear, central characteristic, core characteristic, main characteristic. It's I could say it's most salient characteristic that we compress the action. As for the present progressive, to talk about future fixed arrangements, it is agency. Agency basically means that you have control of the situation. So the way we can express that we have the most control of an action of the future is with present progressive. And going to has as its most central prototypical trait pathway tracking. That's something that I'm going to explain in 5 or 10 minutes, what I mean by pathway tracking. And of course, whether the actions are in the short term or in the long term is also important. But you can notice that they are not really the core, central, nuclear, most important characteristic of any of these different constructions. And please let me remind you that we have this concept or uh, method of analysis of categorization that we have, well, not us, but Mr. Wittgenstein, called family resemblance. And you should remember that in a family, there are a number of traits or characteristics that are common amongst all the members of this family, but that is not to say that everybody is going to have all the characteristics that are shared. So in this example, we discussed about 3 weeks ago that this family shares characteristics such as dark hair, glasses, mustache, and a big nose. Those are typical, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to have all of those traits. Not everybody has dark hair, not everybody has glasses, not everybody has a mustache, and not everybody has a big nose, but those are very common typical characteristics of this. So pretty much the same in a similar vein. That's what I'm proposing here, that we have these three different constructions that make up a family, you could say, so to speak, the family of future tense constructions, will be going to and going to, and they do share a number of characteristics, but certain characteristics are more central to some of the members of this family than others. Now, metaphoric projections. Now that I have problematized, I hope that I've been able to show you the problem. I think we do have a problem with the differences between will and going to, and even though I will not emphasize very much present progressive to talk about fixed arrangements, it is part of the problem. So we have metaphoric projections. What do we mean by metaphoric projections, or why is it important to talk about metaphoric projections? Well, let me put it this way. We need to analyze the internal organization, the internal semantics of the verb go. Why is it important to discuss the the internal organization, the semantic organization of the verb go? Because going to, as a construction to talk about the future, has inherited a lot of schemata, a lot of schemas or schemata of the verb go. So if we really want to understand what's going on between, what the difference are between going to and will, we need to better understand the nature of the verb go, since we are using go for a number of cases in which we talk about the future. So what is so special about the verb go? Well, first of all, go is what we call a motion verb. Or a movement verb. In most books, you will find the term motion instead of movement, but it's basically the same idea. So, what about motion? Let's think about the verb go the way I'm showing you right now. Let's think that a motion event such as go necessarily invokes in its lexical meaning. Right now, I want to discuss go not as a grammatical construction to talk about the future. Not yet, not right now. I will start by saying that the verb go invokes what we call the source, or simply the departure point where you start moving. So let's say that this girl is in her house, and she wants to go to the other house that is on the other extreme, on the other side. And so she's going to move, she's going to walk along this sidewalk until she reaches the other house. So we have a source or a departing point. We have technically, we say that this is the goal or this is the destination, the point she wants to reach. So those are two components of these of the internal semantic organization of the verb go. A third component is the trajectory or path where she's going to move along. What is the path along which she's going to move? What is the way to get to the point B? Um, a fourth component of analysis of a motion verb is what we technically call the mobile. That is simply the object that is moving. In this case, it is the girl. So we have a source, a goal or destination, a path or trajectory, and a mobile or object, in this case, a person that is moving along the pathway. And you could be wondering, what's the fuss with motion events and the verb go? Why should we care so much about the internal organization of motion verbs? I'm going to explain that in a moment, but before I do, remember that when you are moving through space to reach the second house, you are also moving through time. It is virtually impossible to move along or throughout space without also moving throughout time. If you move through space, you also move through time. Another way to say that is that as you walk, time passes by. You cannot go from point A to point B instantly. That's not physically possible. It takes time to move from point A to point B. So we say that that's a sort of connection. That's, you remember we discussed last week about neural co-activation, and neural co-activation is simply a way to say that different regions of our brains are activating at the same time. So because motion and time or space and time or movement across space and time are so often activated at the same time, we say that there is a metaphorical process going on there, or simply that there is a neural co-activation process going on there. So what happens is that it is very common in many languages that we use the verb go to talk about the future. This is the reason we use go in order to talk about the future in English and in Spanish as well. So it is different to say, I go to the market, I go to the bathroom, I go to the school, I go to the hospital, I go to see my friend, I go to bed, I go out, I go to the cinema. All these examples are examples in which I am using the verb go in order to talk about in order to talk about motion, movement. It's not really about time. It's about me moving along a pathway. Try to remember that that pathway is a very important concept. In fact, it is what I am proposing to be the central, most important trait or characteristic of going to pathway tracking. I'm going to talk about that in more detail in 10 or 15 minutes. But right now, I really, really want to emphasize the importance of considering the internal semantic organization of the verb go as a motion verb. Now, let me go here and let me open for a moment this conference that we had some time ago. You remember? Well, this lecture actually, because you know, conference has a different meaning in English. And let me go here. Oh, you are not looking at my screen. Sorry. Let me start sharing Google Chrome. And here, there it is. Let me see if yeah, there it is. You remember, hopefully you were able to be with us with Professor Daniel Casasanto. And you remember that he explained quite a number of very interesting things about the way that people conceptualize time and space in different parts of the world. And our typical example is this one, the one on the left, which is basically what I was trying to explain with my drawing or my other picture. So here this guy is walking, and as he's walking, he's moving through space, but he's also moving through time. So earlier is equal to back, and later is equal to ahead. Earlier means time, back, or earlier refers to time, and back refers to space, whereas later refers to time and ahead refers to space. So that means that in our culture, we have come to associate the back to a prior time, and what is in front of us as what is later in time. Now, I want to ask everybody today, do you think this could be the other way around? Do you think there's any chance that this could be upside down, that maybe the future is on our backs and the future and the past is in front of us? Do you think that's even possible? What do you think? Let me ask somebody. I don't know who's around here. I'm going to ask Letty. You're around here. How are you, Letty?
I'm pretty good, teacher. Thank you.
Great.
How are you?
Excellent, excellent. I'm so happy to be here with you all. So my question is, Letty, do you think there's any chance at all that we could inverse these and start talking about the fact that the future is behind us, that the future is behind us, and the past is in front of us? Do you think that's even possible at all?
Yes, I do think so.
How?
I think we just have to change our minds, our thoughts, and start thinking that it's possible. First of all, we have to think that past could be in front of us because that way we can see our mistakes, that kind of stuff. But yeah, for sure, I think it's possible. It's just we have to change our minds. We just have to analyze it and think that it's possible, and then start thinking what's next. So if the past, it's not
Yeah,
something that it just happened, we just have to think like how to learn about it and that kind of things. That's my opinion.
I get it. I get it. Great. Now, my second question is, um, uh, in fact, well, before I ask you, in fact, we do know that there are some cultures, there are some languages in the world that in which they, in fact, do think that the past is in front of them and that the future is behind them. But now my question is why? Why do they think about time that way?
Maybe because they think that because you had lived in the past, you can correct your mistakes, and the future is something that it didn't happen. It don't happen yet. It doesn't happen yet. So you don't have a reference to analyze it. But in comparison with the past, you lived it, and you know what you did, and then you can correct it, and then in the future you can change it. But because the future is not happened yet.
Great.
I don't know
Yeah,
if you
great.
got it. But yeah.
Yeah, you are on the right track. But now let me say what I think, or the way I explain this. The way I could explain this phenomenon, the fact that some other languages do exactly the opposite of what we do in our own culture. Generally, we do have some exceptions, but generally the time frame reference that we use is the one that Daniel Casasanto is showing here. But think about it this way: in some cultures, they have come to the conclusion, so to speak, that the future is uncertain. We have no idea what's going to happen in the future. The future is dark, so to speak. We don't know anything about the future. I don't know. I'm sorry about this horrible, not very nice example, but it's the one that came to my mind. I don't know when I'm going to die, right? I don't know if I'm going to die tonight at 12 o'clock or tomorrow in the evening or in 1 week or in 5 years or in 50 years. I don't know. I don't know. We don't know. We're not certain about the future. The future is uncertain. Now, um, do I have eyes on my back? Do I have eyes uh, like the ones that I have next to my nose on the back of my head? No, I don't. So I am not able to look what's going on behind me. Maybe there's a guy approaching me behind me with a knife, and I cannot see him coming my way. So I'm not able to see what's behind me. So that's the connection that some cultures have established, that because the future is uncertain, unknown, and because you don't know what's behind you, that's the connection. That's the metaphorical connection. And what about the future? Sorry, the past. Well, you know what you did today's morning. You know what you did yesterday. You know what you did last week. You know what you did 5 years ago, what you did 20 years ago. You're aware of what's been going on or in the previous hours, minutes, seconds, days, years. So you have a vision, so to speak. You have a perspective of what has happened in your life, in your past, or in the past. And you have eyes next to your nose that allow you to look in front of you and have a perspective of what is going on in front of you. So because you know what's in front of you and because you know what has happened before, you have a connection there. It's natural for some other languages in some other cultures to establish a strong connection between the future, which is unknown, is on my back because I don't know what's behind me, and the past is in front of me because I can't see it. So there are languages that do exactly the opposite of what this picture here is trying to show us, where in our own culture it is much more common to think about the future as something that is ahead and about the past as something that is behind us. Um, Now, Daniel Casasanto also showed us this other way of thinking about time. In this case, we think about time as something that moves from left to right. So, for example, the days of the week are represented here: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then the question was, you remember that Daniel Casasanto showed at a point at a given time in his presentation. Let me see if I can find it here. An experiment in which a guy is moving his hands in a way that the future is to the right side and the past is to the left side. Let me see if I, oh, yeah, it's here. So here, I'm not so sure about, I think it's not the full arm that is moving. Let me see where it, I think it's only the hand, but even if it's only the hand that is moving, the point was that it is also possible to think about time in terms of left and right instead of thinking about the future time or past time in terms of in front of us or behind us. So let me see. There it is. So um, let's wait. Yeah. So here's moving his hands. I'm not so sure. I can't remember right now what the experiment was exactly about. I mean, what he was supposed to do, but you can see that he moves his hands. And Daniel Casasanto has come to the conclusion that it is possible to interpret all these movements in terms of left hand is the past, or movements to the left using his hands refer to the past, and movements of his hand, of his right hand to the right side, refer to the future. And then he explained to us that this is that he has come to the conclusion that this is because of the way we read in most Western societies. We read from left to right, and that's why we have come to associate left as earlier and right as later in time. And then some people in the questions uh, part of the lecture, some attendees were asking if this would change in Japanese, where they read from right to left. And I was thinking myself that I think I once heard that there is a culture in which they read from left to right, then from right to left, then from left to right, taking turns. So I was wondering about that. And then we also discussed, you remember in the questions part of the lecture, somebody was asking, what about scrolling down? What if I start scrolling down as I am doing right now? Would we associate upper above myself is the past and below is the future? Probably so. And then you probably remember also this example in which Muslims pray. I'm not sure how many times a day. I think it's about 4 times a day. And because they do this so often, and when they do, they are putting their heads on the ground. And when they do that, they start reciting or remembering passages of their sacred scriptures or book. And because they're thinking about the past with their heads down, Casasanto has found that uh, in this culture or in these cultures, there is a strong trend or tendency to associate the past with uh, the inferior, lower part of space. So this is a sort of vertical alignment or connection between space and time. So these are all examples in which we can appreciate the fact that space and time are closely, intimately connected one to the other. And that's basically what we mean by metaphorical projections. We use our experience with space to define or conceptualize what time is. You know that the basic definition of a metaphor is the is the structuring or thinking of one concept in terms of another, or the definition of one concept in terms of another. That's our traditional basic definition of traditional metaphors. But Lakoff and Johnson and other researchers have come to find out that actually what we used to call simple metaphors are much more than metaphors. Metaphors are neural co-activations. It is the simultaneous activation of different regions of our brains. In this case, we are also making a connection of different parts of our brains, some of them having to do with space, some others having to do with time. Do they overlap? Are they the same? frankly, I don't know. But the point is that space and time are at least conceptually two concepts that we can separate, but are both metaphorically connected. We project our experience of space to understand or develop a concept of time. So I hope this is starting to make sense. Oh, let me change what I'm sharing right now. Oh, I have a comment here. Let me see what's going on here. Metaphor is a vigorous speech based on similarity. Yeah, we could give a traditional definition of metaphor, and yeah, metaphor as well as metonymy and many other figurative strategies of expression are typically, normally, traditionally analyzed as part of poetic writing or communication. And before Lakoff and Johnson, we didn't normally people wouldn't think uh, of metaphors as a fundamental mechanism of the human mind. That is not to say that nothing had been done about metaphors. There were certainly many other authors and thinkers who paved the way for Lakoff and Johnson. But Lakoff and Johnson, as far as I can tell, were the first ones that were able to show in the most systematic way ever that metaphors are not just a matter of poetic thinking, but are a pervasive, omnipresent, almost omnipresent. I don't know. It's difficult to tell if there's anything that is not metaphoric, uh, but they are part of our most fundamental tools of thinking. It's almost impossible to think without metaphors. Metaphors understood as neural co-activations, in the sense that we use what we already know to understand what we don't know and are trying to make sense of, such as time. What is time? Well, time, I won't say that time is always defined in terms of space, but it is very often, as I was showing you these last minutes, um, thought about, defined in terms of our experiences with space. Teacher Mary Kristen is commenting. I see gray rectangles in your screen with. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just that I opened some of the commands of Zoom. Let me close them. Here it is. Here it is. I hope that's better. Oh, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to start sharing again my presentation. Here. So that's basically what I was trying to show you here. That in this on this very schematic picture composition, we have this girl, this person moving through space, and as she's moving through space, she's also moving through time, and there is a strong metaphorical projection or connection between the way we move or our experiences with movement and the way we think about time, and that's very very important if we truly want to understand the difference between going to and will. All right, now let's move a little bit further. So I think I already showed you this before. This is a proposal that I came up with last year, about 1 year ago. Um, there are certainly, surely, different things that I need to improve, but this was my first attempt to propose something better than this. I mean, I'm not saying this is not worth. It's very helpful. This chart, I think, is helpful, nice, useful, but it has a lot of limitations. It's showing reality in a way that is not very coherent with what language really is. Also, this way of summarizing grammatical relationships or the conjugation of the English verb system. Um, it's such a simplification that it really doesn't tell us much about the true nature of each of these constructions. Right now, I will be emphasizing simple future. In 1 or 2 weeks, I will be talking about present perfect and why present perfect is also this is also a very poor representation of what the true nature, well, I shouldn't be saying true nature as if there really were some true meaning, but I mean a better representation of what present perfect is. But today I will concentrate on talking about the differences between will and going to. So this is the way I believe. This is this is a proposal that I came up with. And today I would like to call your attention to, or draw your attention to, what I'm calling here evolutionary momentum prospection, beginning to, ongoing planning and predictions based on evidence, as well as present continuous for fixed arrangements. So please pay attention to this window or this rectangle here. And I will also be discussing over the following minutes, for about 10 or 15 minutes, why I decided to put a sort of bullet or point or ball or whatever you want to name this. I wanted that to be a point because there's something we call punctuality of events. That's a little bit different from punctuality, but the point is that it's a point. It's just that I didn't want to make it so small that you wouldn't be able to see it. But it's basically, the idea is basically that I have a point. You remember that I said here compression. So that's basically what I'm trying to show here, that we are compressing conceptually the whole event here. So that's in fact the main difference between be going to talk about plans and predictions based on evidence. The main difference is that when we use going to, we are opening a window of attention that evokes not everything, but part of the schema that underlies a motion event such as go. Go is schematized when we use it to talk about the future. When we use these metaphoric projections of the verb go to talk about the future, let me repeat the examples that I was giving about 10 minutes ago. I go to the market, I go to bed, I go to the bathroom, I go to school, I go to the hospital, all of these are examples in which I am moving somewhere else. But what about I'm going to think about it? So somebody asks me, so what are you gonna do? And I say, I don't know, I'm going to think about it. Does it mean that I'm going to move somewhere, that I'm going to move, I don't know, to another house, so that I think about what I need to think about there? Am I going to go to another place to think about it? No. When I say I'm going to think about it, what I'm saying is that I'm going to think about it in the future. Of course, we understand that it is probably it's perhaps not the most important thing, but we do kind of infer that it's probably not going to be something that I think about right here, right now, when I say I'm going to think about it. But that's what's interesting, that we have these two different uses of go. We have use or meaning of go in which you are moving through space, also through time, or you will be moving through space, and you will be moving through time as well when you say something like, let me think, I need to go to the supermarket. So we all understand what that means. It means that I need to move from here, from where I am, to the supermarket. But what about I'm going to think about it? That's not really about moving from one place to another, but there's something that has been inherited, that has been projected from our experience of space to our experience of future time. So what is being projected? Well, it's basically a schematic projection or evocation of wait, it's just that I'm trying to make up in my mind if I should say evoke or invoke. No, evoke. I am evoking certain conceptual elements of this window of attention. More precisely, what I am evoking is the fact that there is a way from here to there, but in a more schematic way. How's that? How does that work? Think about it this way. You have probably heard about inertia. I know that inertia and momentum are not exactly the same, but I'm going to use them interchangeably today. We could another day discuss the differences in physics between inertia and momentum, but I'm going to use them interchangeably simply because most authors who talk about evolutionary momentum in linguistics use the term momentum, but I wasn't able to find an image like this one where they use the term momentum. So I'm just going to use them interchangeably as inertia and momentum. So we have all had an experience in which we are going in a car and suddenly the car starts turning either to the left or to the right, in this case to the left, but our bodies want to move or want to continue moving along the original line of motion. And so we feel our bodies being pressed against the door of the car. Um, so let's say that that's basically inertia or momentum. The fact that things are already moving, and unless something stops them, they want to continue doing what they were doing. So that's the basic idea of momentum. When we say evolutionary momentum, what we mean is that when we look at the world, we notice we can make some predictions. We can, just the way we can predict that a body moving along a line should continue to move along that line, pretty much the same. We have observations of the world in which we predict that something is going to happen because we have had so many experiences before in time that we are able to predict that because of inertia or momentum, they're going to continue the way they were going. For example, what if I see a guy kicking a soccer ball, so strong, but in such a unintended way that I can see that he kicks the ball and the ball is heading to a girl who is sitting somewhere near, and I can see that the ball is going to hit her face. Well, that's an example of evolutionary momentum. I see the ball that the guy kicked, and I see that it's going to kick her face, and I say, "Oh my God, the ball is going to hit her face." I can predict the movement. I can make this prediction because I make a sort of prediction of the evolution of events through time. Why? Because I have many times in my life observed that balls or objects that are thrown to the air follow a certain trajectory, a certain pathway. And so I am able, because of my past experiences, I am able to predict, if nothing changes, that the evolution of events will end up with the ball hitting the girl. And that's pretty similar to what we have here. I don't have a ball here, but try to think of my example and connect it to what I'm showing you right now, and try to think of a ball that you look that is moving, and you expect the ball to fall at a certain point. You're able to predict that motion. And when you say that the ball is going to, what you're saying when you say the ball is going to hit the girl, what you're doing is you are tracking, in Spanish, rastreando, you are tracking, you are following the evolutionary momentum of what's going on. Mentally, you are drawing a sort of line, so to speak, of the trajectory that the ball is going to follow. That's why you say the ball is going to hit the other girl. And that is why, even if you can say the ball will hit her, what's the difference between the ball will hit her and the ball is going to hit her? Let me ask somebody. Let me see. Teacher Tanya, what do you think is the difference between the ball is going to hit the girl in this hypothetical situation that I am evoking right now, and the ball will hit her? What's the difference, the main difference for you, Teacher Tanya? Maybe she's not in her computer. Okay, let me ask somebody else. Teacher Laura Pablo, what about you? What do you think about these two constructions? The ball is going to hit her and the ball will hit her. She's probably also not on her computer. Somebody else, somebody else. Teacher Raimundo, could you please share your view about the difference between the ball is going to hit her and the ball will hit her?
Well, according to what you have been talking and what I read, well, and all the previous topics that we have been reading about, like the conceptual metaphors and the recovery of the experiences when talking, I would say that the difference would be that if I say that the ball is going to hit her, is because I have lived that moment, maybe in flesh,
Yep.
or maybe because I have watched it in another occasion.
Yeah.
I could see that the ball, the trajectory of the ball, the momentum, the inertia, and the speed are enough to hit that person.
All
But
right.
on the other hand, if I say that the ball will hit her, it's because the trajectory, maybe the parable or the momentum, does not provide me with with enough information to state that the girl in question is going to be hit. Maybe something else is going to happen. That I have many other. Uh, I I can foresee other result rather than seeing the ball going into her face or into any part of her body.
All right. Yep. Great. Thank you, teacher. Okay, let me add some other appreciations, or some other um, what I think is most relevant between these two, the difference between these two constructions. In my view, and I think that's something I can argue with lots of examples, as many as I can give you today in the 28 minutes that we still have left for today. I could say that when we use the expression, the ball is going to hit her face, or whatever part of the body of the girl that is potentially being harmed. What I'm doing is that I am mentally scanning. It's a sort of mental scan. It's very schematic. I do not necessarily evoke every single detail of the trajectory of the ball going directly to her face, but I do evoke to some extent the mental pathway, the mental trajectory that goes from the point of kicking to the face of the girl. So I have a greater emphasis on the trajectory from the kicking to the hitting on the face of the girl. Whereas, by contrast, or in contrast, if I say the ball will hit her, I sort of ignore, probably not entirely, but I ignore more than I do with going to. I ignore more the trajectory and I concentrate more on the end point, the final result, the moment at which her face will be hit. That's why my proposal here is that there are different terms that we can use. I decided to use the term extreme condensation in extreme posteriority here because I thought that would be the easiest way to talk about this with students. It's probably better to say compression, but I was afraid that compression, as I put it here, compression wouldn't be such a transparent, clear way of talking about this. But let's right now say that it is either a compression or condensation of the event. You don't really care so much about the trajectory of the ball moving through space until the ball hits the face of the girl. What you care the most about is the end point, the final uh, result of the whole thing. You concentrate your attention on the moment at which the ball hits the girl, and you sort of ignore, probably not entirely, but much more than you do with going to the trajectory from the kicking to the face being hit. Um, Something else to consider is I haven't explained why I have this prospection, retrospection, and these things. Let me explain that. I should have explained that 5 or 10 minutes ago. Let me explain it right now. Think about it this way: we are, as human beings, one of the very few animals. I'm not sure if there are any other animals that are able to, but we're surely the only animal that is able to think about the past and the future as in such a sophisticated way as we do. What do I mean by that? Um, let's first use the term perspective. What is perspective? What does it mean to have a perspective? To have a perspective means that you're able to look what's around you, right? You could stop looking at the cell phone or the tablet or the laptop or the PC monitor or screen that you have in front of you right now. You could just look away somewhere else, and you could for example go to the window of your house and look around, and you have a perspective of what's outside of your house, right? That's basically what we mean perspective. Or if you go to a mountain or a hill or whatever you want to go, you can just look around and you have a perspective of what's around you. And that's what I'm calling here in this proposal perispection, which is basically the ability to look around ourselves. Now, retrospection is basically a perspective of the past. I am also able to mentally scan, to have a sort of mental scan of what I did today. So I try to remember. So what did I do today? I could, before I fall asleep, I could try to remember. So what did I do today? So in the morning at 7 o'clock, I woke up and then I went to walk for half an hour because I wanted to exercise, and then I came back to have breakfast, and then I gave a class, and then I could mentally scan everything that I did today. I am able to do that. I can have a sort of perspective of what I've been doing, or I could have a perspective of what have I done with my life, what have I achieved or not in my life, if that were important for me to achieve anything. And I can also have a perspective of the future. That's what I'm calling here prospection. I can have a perspective of the future. What do I expect to do with my life in the future? Where do I see myself 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now? So we can have different perspectives: a perspective of the present, a perspective of the past, and a perspective of the future. So that's basically what I'm calling your retrospection, perispection, and prospection. And because these are such important um, parts of my mental life, uh, I would argue that our languages have developed grammatical strategies to think about those retrospections, those prospections, and probably to a lesser extent, I'm not very sure, but in my proposal here, there are not many perspective or perspective. I mean, perspective. grammatical strategies to talk about what is in front of me right now. Probably because it's so evident, right? I don't really need to talk about what is so evident, but I'm not so sure about that. But I am pretty sure that we do have these grammatical constructs to invoke retrospections, prospections, and perispection, or simply perspectives of what's around me right now, right here. Now, we're discussing right now evolutionary momentum prospection. So I can make a prospection. You could call it a projection if you wish, of what's going to happen next. And that is why I decided to use this window, because this is a window of attention. And that's why I decided to use a sort of black point here, because I am compressing or condensing everything right there. Sorry, here. So the ball is going to hit her face of the girl, invokes a prospection as a sort of, metaphorically speaking, window of attention that allows me to inspect, mentally scanning very quickly. Our brains work extraordinarily quickly. All of that is going on in, I don't know, milliseconds, or even lesser than that. We're able to make a sort of prospection of what's going to happen. And we have this sort of mental scan of the ball is going to hit her face. Whereas the other example, the ball will hit her face, doesn't really make any strong emphasis on the trajectory from the kicking to the hitting. Okay, so that's my first example. We need to give more examples so that this makes much more sense. So let's think of another example. So let's see here. Okay, the typical, I think it's the most common example. I think, I'm not so sure, but I think that most teachers I have ever talked with about going to talk about predictions based on evidence will come up with the example, it's going to rain, to emphasize that because you're looking at the black clouds, you have evidence that it's going to rain. So why is it that we don't say, we usually don't say it will rain when we are looking at the black clouds about to pour down on us all of the rain? And for those of you who are native speakers of Spanish, the example that I'm going to give you right now should make a lot of sense. How do we say in Spanish? ¿Va a llover or lloverá?
Va a llover.
Va a
Yeah.
llover, ¿no?
Yeah.
Va a llover.
Yeah, thank you, teachers. Yeah, I have never ever found, not in Mexico, I don't know if anybody else somewhere else in the world that speaks another variety of Spanish, but in our variety of Spanish, we would never say normally, under normal circumstances, if I want to know if it is a good time to go and do the groceries in the supermarket, and if I just look outside and see the black clouds, I don't, it's super hard that people would say it will rain. We, in Spanish, we wouldn't say lloverá, we would say va a llover, right? Why in Spanish? Let me first explain that for the Spanish constructions, and then I will come back to English. But why does it happen like that in Spanish? Would anybody please explain that using what I've been trying to show you with all these drawings or pictures that are intended to be schematic of the phenomenon? Of course, I should improve these pictures, but well, they should be helpful to some extent today. Anybody? Could anybody try to help me explain why we say in Spanish va a llover and we wouldn't say lloverá?
Because we have evidence, maybe.
Yeah, and what does that have to do with these schematic pictures that I'm giving you here? Okay, let me say it this way. The difference is that with going to, you have a perspective of the of the evolutionary momentum. That's another example of evolutionary momentum. You have a sort of mental scan, a mental pathway of the clouds moving in a way that at some point they will get to the point where they will start dropping all of the rain. So because we have this sort of mental window, we're able to see what's going to happen. We're able to scan the evolution of events. Try to think about it in terms of an evolution of events. What's going to happen next? We're able to track step by step what's going to happen. Let me give another example in Spanish. From Spanish, once I finish with 3 or 4 examples in Spanish, I will go back to English so that I can make this more meaningful for the purposes of the will versus going to discussion of today. My other example in Spanish is, what would you say in Spanish? ¿Ya vamos a comer o ya comeremos?
Ya vamos a
Ya
comer.
vamos a comer.
Vamos a comer.
Yeah, the going to, the equivalent to going to in Spanish, right? We couldn't say, oh, look, it's already 3 o'clock. You know what? I have to go because ya comeremos. No, because ya vamos a comer, right? That's the natural way to say that in Spanish, because we have this, we technically call that prospective future, in which we have a perspective of every single step that is in front of us. It's about to happen. It's not far away. That's also a good reason why I decided on this chart to put future will for predictions up until here on the upper right corner, because usually, especially in Spanish, I will in 5 minutes more or less explain how how these examples of Spanish help us to explain the difference between going to versus will. But right now, let's just say that with going to, the events are usually closer to us. Why do I say that usually with going to, events are closer to us? Usually when we talk about events using going to, most examples, that prototypical examples of going to, are going to be examples of events that are in the short term, that have to do with what's going to happen in the short term, maybe in the medium term, but not so often about the long term. For the long term, we usually use will. Prototypically, especially in Spanish, we use will to talk about something that will happen very far away in time. How far away? Well, that's very relative. That could be 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, 100 years or 1 million years from now. That's quite relative. But prototypically, when we use going to talk about evolutionary momentum, prospection, we are talking about things that are quite close to us. Okay, another example. It's, well, in Spanish it's going to rain. Suppose that you want to invite a friend to have dinner with you, with your family at home. What would you tell your family? ¿Va a venir un amigo a comer o vendrá un amigo a comer?
Va a venir.
Va a venir.
¿Va a venir un amigo a comer?
Va a venir un amigo a comer.
Va a venir, pero también vendrán, no se oye, no se escucha tan mal.
It's possible to say vendrá, but there is a difference, right? And we,
Sí, también vendrá.
yeah, and we need to analyze what the difference is between va a venir and vendrá. And well, va a venir is he is going to come, emphasizes the fact that that we're looking at, we have a perspective. We're looking at the whole thing very schematically. We probably don't think about all the possible details, but much more so than we could or we do with will, or what is technically called morphological future in Spanish, vendrá. So most of the time, we could say, you know what, mom or dad or whoever is with you at that moment, a friend is going to come to have dinner with us. Va a venir un amigo. Or un amigo va a venir. Usually va a venir un amigo. We use this going to construction to talk about somebody coming to have dinner with us because we are evoking step by step what's gonna happen. In contrast, if I say vendrá un amigo, yeah, it's possible, but it's not very typical. It's in a normal everyday situation, we couldn't use that. There are certain situations in which we could occasionally say vendrá un amigo. Normally, let me venture to propose that we could use vendrá when we are not so sure, when this is a case in which we're not 100% certain that it's going to happen. In fact, when we want to question somebody, something, let me think of an example. For example, we have the expression, ¿será que hoy lloverá? We're not so sure, right? Will it be that it will rain today in Spanish, right? So I'm trying to give an example or an explanation of what changes from using it's a friend is going to come to have dinner with us versus a friend will come to have dinner with us in the case of the Spanish. All right, with those examples in mind, it's going to rain. We are already going to eat, and a friend is going to come home to have dinner with us. I would expect you to notice the difference between all these examples and the equivalents with will. So what is the difference now between a friend is going to come and a friend will come? What's the difference? Let me ask somebody. Teacher Rocio, could you please tell us what you think?
The difference between
Yeah, a friend is going to come home to have dinner with us, and a friend will come to have dinner with us.
a friend is going to come and a friend will come. I don't know. Perhaps for me it would be okay. I don't know if sure if I say will come. I don't know. Perhaps it would be sure, and if I say a friend is going to come.
Yep.
Perhaps it's not so sure. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Yeah. The basic difference, of course,
Can you repeat the sentences?
Yeah. A friend is going to come home to have dinner with us. So a friend is going to come home to have dinner with us versus a friend will come home to have dinner with us today.
Okay. If we use good, it can be a possibility.
With which one? Sorry.
If we use good, it can be a possibility.
Good.
And the first one is sure.
You mean hypothetical good? I good or he? Good? Oh, well, that's a different construction, and yeah, that's I think it is called irrealis.
That's possibility, no?
Yeah.
The possibility.
But you are talking about will.
But right now we want the difference between going to
and will.
Okay, it's going to. Okay.
Yeah.
Going to.
Yeah, teacher.
Sorry, going to implies for me something for sure in the short term, whereas will implies something in the long term, but it is not sure. It is not hypothetical, but there is a chance to happen and there is a chance of not happening.
All right.
For me, that will be the main difference.
All right. Well, I could argue that the main difference, there are several differences. I already mentioned before that there are different conceptual differences between all these constructions. But the one that I could argue is the most important difference between going to and will is that when we say a friend is going to come home to have dinner, we are in a very schematic way, but we are evoking the step-by-step process from here to the moment, from right now to the moment at which we will be sitting at the table having dinner with that friend. So we're going to opens up a sort of window of attention that focuses much more on the trajectory than on the end point of the action, or at least not as much as will. With will, a friend will come, we sort of eliminate, probably not entirely, but far much more the trajectory. With a friend will come, we eliminate very, very much the trajectory from the moment of speaking to the moment of having dinner with that friend. So we focus, we concentrate our attention on the end point or the final action or the moment of the action of having dinner with our friend. With will, while we concentrate more of our attention on the process, on the fact that there is a trajectory from right now to the moment of having dinner, when we say we're going to have dinner with um, a friend. Okay, we only have 5 minutes left, so I would like to discuss one final example. Let me pick one from these ones. Sorry, I don't see that going to where I left going to. Will you, I will, I'll. Oh, it's got to be here. Yeah. Okay, let's discuss this final example for today. I hope that we can finish this discussion next week. Let's discuss this example that I have here. I'm going to learn to drive. That's what we usually call an intention, right? I did not mention here intentions, not here, but it's perfectly analyzable with what we already got here. So what's the difference between I'm going to learn to drive and I will learn to drive? Could anybody share his or her opinion about the difference between I'm going to learn to drive and I will learn to drive? Assuming,
I would say,
yeah,
I would say that I'm going to learn to drive is the process, the intention, something that is already planned for me.
yep,
But it is the process, as you said, as you mentioned before. Probably is the I don't know what word you use, something like trajectory.
trajectory, yeah,
Uh-huh. And I will learn to drive implies something in the long term. There is a possibility of doing so, maybe not.
yep,
And this is a possibility. But the first one, the going to, is the process, is already planned, and it starts from now to the moment I start my driving lessons.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That I think you have quite hit the nail on the whole issue. Yeah, that's what I could argue, that in cases such as I'm going to learn to drive, these examples are usually categorized as intentions or plans because you have a plan, right? You already made up your mind. You already decided some time ago that you would learn to drive. Now, in order to do that, you need a sort of, well, I already said it. You really need a sort of plan where you are going to learn to drive, at what time, how much money you are willing to spend, because you have, well, if you pay somebody, or if you're going to ask someone else to help you learn to drive, for how much time, that sort of thing. You have a sort of mental map of what has to be done in order to carry out your intention of learning to drive. So in a very schematic way, you have a mental pathway of the metaphorical trajectory of what has to be done, what you have to do in order to do what you said that you want to do. I'm going to learn to drive. So you sort of imagine, so to speak, the whole process from right now to the moment at which you will be learning to drive. In contrast, if you say, I will learn to drive, you take for granted that it will happen. You don't really focus your attention on the step-by-step, on the all the steps, all the necessary steps that you have to take in order to make it happen. I have only 1 minute left, actually a few seconds. That is I will finish today's meeting with this. That is, with everything we have said today, it should be quite evident that it is just so natural that we use going to talk about plans and intentions, because with going to, we're able to evoke a sort of schematic mental map of the whole trajectory. And because we have this mental map, you could say that you have control over what's going on around. And if you have control over what is going on around, then with going to, that facilitates, promotes, makes it easier to talk about plans and intentions, because plans and intentions require that you have some control. In contrast, when you want to talk about predictions in the far future, because you don't have so much control about what is far away from you, it is more natural to use will instead of going to, because going to makes it feel closer to you, and because it's closer to you, you have more control over what's next to you than what you have control over what is very far away from you. Well, it's already 8:21. I was not able to fully to finish the whole discussion, but I hope that I've been able to at least today show you the problem that we want to solve, and I hope that you have noticed what conceptual tools we will be using. And I think next week I will show you, I should be able to finish this discussion and then show you how to design practical materials to use with our students, because I want to make this as practical as I can. I don't want all of this just to stay within the limits of theoretical, purely abstract theoretical ideas. Well, that's all for today, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'll keep in touch over the following days, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for your time. I know that your time is very precious, and I really appreciate that you were here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye
Thank you
bye.
very much.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you
Very
evening.
much.
Are we
Good
going
day. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thanks a lot.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Nice night.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Goodbye.